I never thought a simple routine day could turn my world upside down, but it did. My name is Lila, I'm 29, and until a few weeks ago, I truly believed my marriage with Adam was strong. We had been together for 6 years, married for 3. Friends always called us the perfect couple, the kind who never fought, who laughed through life together. I guess that's why the shock hit me so hard when I found out the truth. He knew everything and I had no idea. It started as an ordinary Tuesday morning. I woke up before Adam as usual, brewed my coffee and scrolled through my phone while the house was still quiet. The sun was streaming through the blinds, casting long, lazy stripes across the living room floor. I had errands to run, emails to send, and meetings to attend. But I didn't notice any tension, any warning signs, anything out of the ordinary. I thought we were fine. The first inkling that something was off didn't come from him. It came from a small envelope resting neatly on the kitchen counter. It wasn't in his handwriting, at least not exactly. The paper was heavy, and the ink was smudged in places as if someone had held it too long before setting it down. I picked it up, curious, and noticed a faint, familiar scent, Adam's cologne. My heart skipped. I tore it open slowly, not knowing what to expect. Inside there was a single sheet of paper folded in half, the words written in a neat, deliberate script. Lila, I need you to know that this is not easy for me. I've watched, I've waited, and I've tried to pretend that everything is fine, but I can't anymore. You think I don't see it, but I do. You think I don't know, but I do. And now I have no choice but to leave. I hope someday you understand why. Adam. The words didn't register immediately. I read them over and over, thinking maybe my eyes were deceiving me. I laughed nervously, my voice trembling. Surely this was a joke, a mistake. Maybe he had meant to leave it for later or had written it as some kind of absurd reminder. But as I stared at the page, reality began to sink in, and my stomach tightened into a knot that I couldn't shake. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I had missed. What had I done? Was there something I said, something I did, that had pushed him to this point? Adam had always been patient, calm, the kind of man who rarely raised his voice. I had joked, teased, even nagged occasionally, but never in a way that I thought would hurt him this deeply. Or at least, that's what I had convinced myself. The room felt suddenly smaller, suffocating. I sank onto the couch, holding the letter in my hands like it was both evidence and weapon. Every memory replayed itself with a sharper edge. The nights I had been short with him, the careless remarks I had made when I was tired or stressed, the times I had ignored his attempts to talk, it all seemed to gather into a single pattern, a trail I hadn't noticed until now. I remembered the weekend before. We had a small get-together at our apartment, a few friends over, just casual fun. I had been drinking more than usual, laughing louder, teasing Adam about things that, in retrospect, weren't funny. I laughed at his expense in front of everyone, and though he smiled, I had noticed a flicker in his eyes, a shadow I dismissed as temporary annoyance. I thought he was joking when he made that one quiet comment, but now I realized it had been a silent warning, a signal that my actions had cut deeper than I imagined. The letter made me confront a truth I had buried for too long. Adam had been aware all along. Every small frustration, every little joke, every ignored plea for attention. He had seen it, silently endured it, and loved me despite it. And yet, he reached a point where endurance was no longer enough. The person I had believed to be patient and unshakable had limits, boundaries I had carelessly tested. Tears started to blur my vision. I crumpled the letter slightly in my hands, not wanting to but unable to stop myself. How had I not seen it coming? How had I been so blind to his feelings, so confident in my assumptions that love could carry me through anything? Love was not enough, not when respect had been chipped away piece by piece. I could hear the faint sounds of the city outside, distant car horns, the hum of early morning life, but inside, everything was silent. My mind went back over the last few months, those little conversations where I had laughed at his insecurities, brushed off his concerns, told him he worried too much. Each memory now felt like a dagger, each careless word magnified beyond recognition. The weight of the letter pressed down on me. Not just because of what it said but because of what it represented, finality. No argument, no pleading, no frantic calls could undo what had been set in motion. He had made his decision and it wasn't open to negotiation. He had been patient enough to watch, to hope, to forgive, and even then, he had chosen to act when silence was no longer bearable. I spent hours reading and rereading the letter, dissecting every word, every pause, every subtle undertone. The heartbreak wasn't just in the loss, it was in the realization of how unaware I had been of his suffering. He had carried his pain silently, while I assumed the relationship was perfect, untouchable. The irony was cruel. The man I had taken for granted, the one I assumed would always forgive, always stay, had been quietly measuring, calculating, and finally deciding. I knew deep down that there was no one to blame but myself. The regrets piled up like a tower I couldn't climb down. I remembered the way he had looked at me during our last small disagreement, the silent resignation in his eyes, the way he had held himself together while I laughed off the tension. I had missed every warning, dismissed every sign, and now it was too late. The hours stretched into evening, and I realized I hadn't eaten, hadn't moved from the spot where I had first opened the letter. The house felt impossibly empty, as if the walls themselves had absorbed his absence. Every sound reminded me that he was no longer there. His coffee mug left in the sink, his jacket missing from the hook, the faint scent of him lingering in the living room air. It was almost cruel how ordinary the apartment felt, how little it gave away of the extraordinary loss it now contained. I didn't want to accept it. Part of me wanted to convince myself he would come back, that he had left the letter as a test or a warning. But another, quieter part of me knew the truth. He had said everything he needed to say in that single page. No more explanations, no more chances. He had already gone beyond words to action, and that action was final. I sank further into the couch, hugging my knees, trying to make sense of what was left behind. Memories, unanswered questions, and a haunting realization that love, no matter how deep, could be eroded by carelessness, by ignorance, by the small cruelties we don't notice in ourselves. And as night fell, I held the letter close, reading the words one last time before placing it gently on the coffee table. I realized that the heartbreak was not just in his leaving, but in the awareness that I had never truly known him, not until he was gone, not until I read his goodbye.